and welcome to another fantastic episode of The Breakdown. X's and O's, and we're not talking hugs and kisses, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for a very special episode. The man, the myth, the legend, the guy you all came to see to my right is a five-time NFL vet, an ex-NFL DB, the man y'all all came to see, Mr. Nate Ness.
It's Gator, baby.
It's Gator Baby. It's Gator Baby. Now, Nate, my voice is a little hoarse. Now, if you did not watch WrestleMania, I mean, I just don't. I don't know what to say.
Dwayne came back, didn't he?
Oh, he's been back. He's been back.
How was it?
It was fantastic. I'm not even going to spoil the last match, but that last match was like a top 5 match I have seen in my entire life.
Question: what's your favorite WrestleMania match?
Oh, that's so difficult. Now, there is a consensus kind of thing that the best kind of technical match in terms of stuff that's not too flashy is WrestleMania 25, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And then they had a Rob sent you a Kelsey clip. Well, if it'll come up, I don't even know why it's not. They had like a streak versus career match the next year at WrestleMania. And
oh yeah, he did. He did send me the Kelsey clip.
And Shawn Michaels ended up retiring, right? So my favorite WrestleMania match, and this is purely biased because I was there. And I remember, I remember it being good, but it might not even be a good match. But my favorite WrestleMania match was Batista, Randy Orton, and Daniel Bryan, triple threat main event, when Daniel Bryan won both the belts. Now, it's probably not the best WrestleMania match, but it is my favorite because, one, I was there right by the ring. Because, funny story, my mom, if you know my mom, you know my mom. She's in the comments all the time. She's a big nosebleeds type gal. We like to sit in the nosebleeds. We ain't super like rich people. We don't have that front seat money, you know.
Yeah, got that bad. Okay.
She is. Yeah, he's right. She is late to a lot of things. And due to her being late, my whole family is sort of like that. Except me and my sister. Like, we're not late people. Well, I'm not. Basically me. I'm probably the only person that's not late. Because I don't like being late anymore. But we were late this time. You know, I wasn't stressing out or anything because, you know, I was not old enough to really stress out about it. But when we got to the ticket office after missing the whole entire show, the whole entire kickoff show, they said that, hey, your tickets are expired. We gave these tickets to someone else. And we're like, there's no way. We had gotten those tickets in December for Christmas. And so they're like, okay, hold up. Let us see what we can do. They pulled out 5 steel chairs for us. And we went in and sat right behind the front row that was facing the ring. And it was fantastic. It was so fantastic. I was on ground floor, cameras all over me. Actually, let me show you something now that I think about it. Hopefully I don't get copyright for this. And I might get copyright for this, but I'll turn it down. Hold up. I'll turn it off. Watch this. Now that we're talking about this is so funny. WrestleMania 30, we were on ground level. And this is the theme for 5 years almost that WWE came out during Raw, right? Does that little kid on the right look familiar to you?
Bro, is that you or Tanner?
That's me. That's me. That's me with my Sheamus stuff on. Sheamus was my favorite wrestler. I was on Raw theme for like 5 years straight. The Raw theme. And it is me. I'm not even lying to you. This is me. This is me right here. When that is my sister in the middle. When The Rock came out, she loves The Rock so much, she flipped out when The Rock came out. And so because of her flipping out, the cameras were like, man, we got to get on this. This is a fan moment, right? And I was so ecstatic, too, because it was the freaking Rock. And so I was flipping out, too. And they ended up putting on the theme for like 5 years straight.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Jason. That is what's up. If y'all don't believe me, then
the best WrestleMania match is Stone Cold Steve Austin's and Shawn Michaels. That's the best.
I love Shawn Michaels. He's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
I love Shawn Michaels. But But enough with a little bit of wrestling. I got to ask you about how you've been doing. So, what's up, Nate? How
It's
you
cracking.
doing?
Man, I'm doing good. Leg day was today, leg and abs, chilling. It's Tuesday. Got to give a shout out to the kids. Tyler, Nemo, Demi, love you guys. DQ, love you guys. Shout out to the parents. Shout out to moms and pops. Well, hold on, my dad's here. What's up, Dad? What's up? Say what's up. What's going on, fellas? Y'all hear my dad? He's chilling. And I'm about to get in trouble, but I got to do this again. I got to. Damn it. But nah, everything's good, man. Just relaxing. Beautiful day. So yeah.
I hear that. I love that. I had a really good weekend. I actually ended up going to Oxford. Now I go to Starkville, right? I'm in Starkville for state. Well, Oxford's Ole Miss, right? So that's like mortal enemies.
Mm-hmm.
So I end up going over there. My buddy doesn't have a car, and he was like, "Well, I've watched wrestling with him growing up," and it was like, "Well, this is such a big event. We need to all be together for it." So I ended up driving to Oxford. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Zach. I ended up driving to Oxford, picking up my buddy, driving back to Starkville the next day because I stayed the night with him at his dorm. And it was like fantastic. We had such a great weekend. And then yesterday I ended up driving him back, made him miss his Monday classes because I had an exam and I wasn't going to drive back Sunday night after WrestleMania. I probably didn't go to bed till probably 2 a.m. Sunday night. And it was worth it. You only live once. I might not be partying and drinking like other college kids, but I'm freaking watching wrestling until 2 a.m. So that's what I do. Exactly. Exactly. But speaking of watching wrestling, I need to get into this next segment because people are going to want to watch this. We actually ended up doing, well, let me introduce first segment first. Triple N or Nate's necessary notes. Let me turn this down before it's too loud. That might have been too loud. That was kind of loud, actually.
Perfect. No, perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. But we have recently kind of ended free agency, as you know, and we talked about the best teams in free agency right before it ended. And I gave you my 3 teams. We did whatever. But we failed to mention what the bottom teams look like. Now, I have a kind of a thing pulled up that shows me these teams and what they got during free agency, how they use these. And I want to give you my 3 worst teams in free agency. If y'all haven't watched, last Thursday was the producers edition of the flagship show. Third Down Thursdays, of course, on Thursdays at 7 o'clock Central. Cy and I were the co-hosts, and we actually had a grading segment. So if you haven't checked that out, every team is graded over there. I'm getting my worst teams from that grading because we have had a consensus. Nate, you were there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you were there for all the teams. So my third to worst team for free agency. Now, I want to give an honorable mention to the Arizona Cardinals. I want to give them an honorable mention. They ended up getting Desmond Ridder, didn't do much with it. And they did a couple okay things, which is why they're not the bottom 3, but they're an honorable mention in terms of they did not do what they needed to do this offseason. So let's go to my third worst. And we're going to visit old Sean Payton in Denver. What exactly has he been doing since he has cut Russell Wilson? And this is one of the big reasons he is at the bottom 3. They cut Russell Wilson, incurred that cap hit, and are trying everything they can do to make sure that they can kind of build around that cap hit that they have just incurred.
So,
and the reason this is my third worst is because what do all these players have in common? What I'm about to tell you, they signed a fullback, Michael Burton, to a 1-year deal.
That was my other teammate.
D tackle Malcolm Roach, 2 years, $7 million deal. They signed PJ Locke, Will Lutz, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Adam Troutman, tight end, and Michael Burton. Now, which is another fullback. Well, I think this is Mike Burton and Michael
Mike
Burton.
I think the same person.
The same person, but they have it listed twice. Yeah. Those people that I just told you, Nate, do you know what all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people have in common? They're all people that were in a previous Saints regime. They were all guys that kind of left the New Orleans Saints because they were probably not good enough, for lack of a better word, to start or either be of Saints depth. So Sean Payton's like, well, I knew these players when I was over there, so I'm going to bring them to Denver. Adam Troutman, I don't know, he is not a great tight end. I mean, Michael Burton's okay. You can keep him. He's not bad. Will Lutz is okay. But then you sign like Lil Jordan Humphrey, PJ Locke. I love Lil Jordan Humphrey though. Malcolm Roach, like all these Saints people. Shawn Michaels is gonna come take them to Denver and be like, okay, y'all are automatically gonna be good now because you didn't work out in New Orleans. Maybe work out in Denver. Because of that, I put Denver that low. I mean, what do you think? What do you think of Sean Payton's mindset for taking all these past Saints players and bringing them to Denver to try to make them better than they were before?
You have to understand, this is a new regime and new, this is Sean Payton's first year in Denver. And what he did was he inherited a team. He inherited a team that was not, his selection, his picking and choosing and whatnot. And I do not agree with the handling of Russell Wilson. And just again, Russell Wilson's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl champion. He may be on the back nine, as they say, of his career. He still can play. He can play at a high level. It's very, very disappointing in a sense that, how, again, how he was treated and how he handled the situation in itself, being traded and just, again, how he's berated and on the sideline at times. And just Sean Payton's overall, just again, lack there of respect for what he has done in this league. But at the same time, this is his team. He's the head coach. He's going to be the guy that's that's standing out there in front outside the quarterback. He wants to put his own spin on the team. He wants to build this team in the way he feels that it should go, because again, he has a vision in itself, and that's why they hired him. They hired Sean Payton because of the work he did in New Orleans. But if I had to pick, no disrespect to Sean Payton, but when he was in New Orleans, he had this gentleman by the name of Drew Brees, who, in my opinion, is a top 10 of all time quarterback. You gonna say top 3? Wow.
And we're gonna get to that later in the show.
Top 10. I'm gonna give him top 10.
Oh, he's easily top 10, but I'm gonna say
I'm gonna give him top 10. But he had Drew Brees, and again, he had a great formula for winning because he had a great quarterback, a veteran quarterback, who just knew exactly the game. He was a student of the game and a consummate pro at the position, and that helps big time. That helps big time. One thing I've said on our shows is the most important position on your franchise, if you're an NFL team, is what? The quarterback position. The captain of the captain of the team, the leader, and so forth. And you got to have somebody that can, again, when crunch time comes, can deliver at any moment, that can lead and calm a team down. That can, when teams are tested during the year, and you need someone that's going to be able to weather those storms and whatnot. And again, he had Drew Brees, one of the best to ever do it. But he wants to build this team in the manner and the fashion that he wants to, build it. So if that means, bringing in a lot of players that he has familiarity with from New Orleans, that's what's going to happen. And that's typically what happens when, head coaches come from different teams. They bring players with them. Dan Quinn, when he came to Atlanta, he took guys from Seattle. We look at him going now from Atlanta to Dallas. He took guys with him to Dallas. If I'm not mistaken, Keanu Neal was a linebacker in Dallas at a period of time. Now that he's going to, the Commanders, he's taking players. Players will follow coaches in itself and whatnot. And some coaches, they want to bring players in from a previous regime that can, again, bring them into the locker room, again, build a culture. That's what you want to build a culture and a dynamic. So that's the reasoning behind it.
But do you agree with the low grade though? Is it too harsh for me to give them that low of a grade?
No, not at all. You listen. They got a low grade from me as well. When you release a Russell Wilson, knowing that the cap hit that you're going to take, and you have nothing to show for it. I'm not going to sit here and say they're tanking, but you have nothing to show for it. That means that 38 million that you got to pay. You got to pay that to Russell. That counts against your cap and whatnot. And what do you have to show for it? You don't have a quarterback on your roster. If I'm not mistaken, you don't even have a first round pick.
Oh wow!
You don't.
They might not.
They
Well,
do not. Robbie, tell me if they
no,
have a first round pick.
But they traded Bradley Chubb, right?
They traded Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins. They may have a first round pick because of the Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins trade. They may. Well, hold on. Let's not. I don't know, but I'm not sure if they have a first round draft pick in this year's draft.
Well, they have it in this year's draft. They have the 12th overall pick.
They have the 12th? Okay.
Yes, but last year they had traded their first and a second from this year to the New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't to the New Orleans Saints.
For Sean Payton. Yeah. They traded it for Sean Payton.
Because he retired, and in order for him to when he came out of retirement,
his contract was frozen. He still had his contract. Yeah. But I want to address the comment because I think earlier we were talking about wrestling. I actually said Shawn Michaels instead of Sean Payton. I'm sorry if I did. I'm not paying attention but my mind is Sean Payton. My mind is Sean Payton. But we talked about Shawn Michaels and I love Shawn Michaels. Somebody said Shawn Michaels. I apologize. But let's go on to the next team. Because of that Russell Wilson and signing these Saints players, it didn't work out. I just had to put them that low. But they're not the lowest. Now, the second to lowest, whether you might agree with me or not, and I think you might, but I'm going to have to go with the Buffalo Bills because they have let their entire roster just about leave. They have I don't even know the players because it doesn't even show me on here. It just shows me who they've signed. But I know Jordan Poyer left. I think Micah Hyde might have left too. Like all your good players that have, you said you want to build a culture. That culture in Buffalo is now gone because all of their players that they have had these past several years where they're making the AFC Championship and going far in the playoffs and losing, they don't have that culture anymore. So they are trying to build a different culture in Buffalo. And the reason I have them this low is not only did all of their culture leave Buffalo and all their players leave Buffalo, but so did their number one wide receiver. Stephon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans. Stephon Diggs, a 5th-round pick for 2025, a 6th-round pick for 2024, was traded to the Texans for a 2nd-round pick. If that is not robbery, I don't know what is. You're going to tell me that you're going to trade somebody that led the league in receiving the last 3 years ago? 3 years ago, he led the league in receiving, and you're only going to get a 2nd-round pick out of him while giving the Texans more draft capital. Because if you think about it, the Texans had an extra 2nd-round pick because they had gotten from the Minnesota Vikings. Because the Vikings had traded for the Texans' 1st-round pick this year. And in turn, they gave them a 2025 2nd-round pick. Well, the Texans, that was free money. They basically got Stephon Diggs for free. And so whenever you trade your number one wide receiver, and get this, Nate, we were talking about that last week, how Stephon Diggs is unhappy in Buffalo. And right when we were talking about it, guess what? He gets traded.
He gets traded. What you got to also understand, I hate to say this, but this is the reality of it. Buffalo's window closed. This was a team that we seen this team take Kansas City to the limit, to the max, to the edge.
Only team to do it. I guess if you want to say 49ers just pass.
No. Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But this team, and to be honest with you, the Buffalo Bills were a team that was built to compete. And again, the expectation. There are two things: expectation and there's reality. Expectation is always here. You have a Stephon Diggs, you have all of these players on offense. Josh Allen was supposed to be, quote unquote MVP, the second coming of Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, all in one. Um, but they underachieved. You have a team that has a defense, and that defense was stacked, with a lot of great players and so forth. And they were competing in AFC East, where, if I'm not mistaken, they were dominant these last 4 or 5 years in the AFC East. But they never didn't, like, when it came to playoff time, when it mattered most, they come up short. And again, for a team that has expectations, or just, again, the main goal is to make it to a Super Bowl, but they always ran into this one in particular team, their Achilles heel, and that window closed. That window has closed. Again, that window closed about a couple of years ago, to be honest with you, about 2 years ago, if I have to be completely honest. They're not the same Buffalo Bills team, and in this moment, you got to rebuild. Now, we talked about Stephon Diggs not being happy because you have players that play the game for money, and you have guys that play the game for championships. A lot of guys want to go ahead and get that championship, and they put it on your resume, because, again, once you achieve that, that's something that can't be taken away from you. And you got to also understand that whether it's basketball, baseball, football, there are so many great players that have contributed to sports, just, again, and redefine positions, redefine, how you train and how you go about it, the effect that it has on its fans and on the upcoming generation. There are a lot of men and women that have competed at the highest level and the most competitive level that don't have that championship on their resume. And again, sometimes that's a now, that's one of those aspects where, again, we compete for championships. That's why you play the game. You want to be the person that, the guy, when it's all said and done, that's holding that Vince Lombardi trophy up in the second week of February. And with Stephon Diggs, he knows that window closed. One of the things, if I had to pick underachieving teams that have played, or underachieving teams, in my opinion, you have the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears, the year that they traded Khalil Mack, they underachieved mightily. Buffalo Bills, a couple of years. Again, the Green Bay Packers. You have teams that, again, on paper, they look good. But when it comes to January, playing football in January, they always come up short.
So let's go to a team that their window might be closed due to the fact that they have done just about absolutely nothing.
I hope you sent us some sorry-ass Cowboys.
And so our number one worst team in NFL free agency this season has to be the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we look at what they've done, and they have done pretty much everything, every depth player, but they lost Leighton Vander Esch. So they signed Eric Kendricks on a 1-year deal after he got released in Los Angeles. If you want to bring out your jockstrap, you can, because he probably hadn't done much of anything since he was on the Vikings.
I'll be honest with you, my dad's right there. I don't think he wants to see my jockstrap.
So we look at what Dallas is. They're at a big dilemma right now. They have 3 players and a coach that are now on the last years of their contract. Now, you have Dak Prescott, who played MVP caliber this last season. It's not arguable. If you want to argue with me, go look at the numbers. MVP caliber this past season. Probably should have won MVP. That's another story. Go watch the breakdown where we talk about it. He's on his last year of his 4-year, $160 million deal, where he is now making $55 million roughly this next year. Now you have Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is probably the best of – he's got to be the best defensive player Dallas Cowboys have. And they ended up signing his 5th-year option, accepting it as a defensive end instead of a outside linebacker, to where that now they have freed up $3 more million in cap space because of it. So you have Dak, you have Mikey, you have your best offensive player and your best defensive player on the last years, and then you have CeeDee Lamb, who's on his 5th-year option right now. And so I saw earlier, it's like we have and we don't really see, and we've seen people, rookie wide receivers, for example, that have been on their 5th-year option, and not just wide receivers, but other players who have sat out and not played in the camps preparing for the season because they do not have a contract to solidify their spot and where they are playing. CeeDee Lamb is on his 5th-year option. He's going to make about $17 million this next year, and he might as well, maybe he might sit out because now there is no future for CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. You have no contract for him. You haven't even talked to him about a contract, and now he's thinking, well, does Dallas even want me after I put up 1,700 receiving yards this past season? So that's the dilemma the Cowboys are in right now. Nate, what do you think about it? And is this the worst team that we've seen in free agency this past season?
Yeah, I just don't like the Cowboys. Trash. No, MJ, Dak put up MVP numbers, and we men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Okay, the one thing that kind of gets me with Jerry Jones, because a lot of this is coming from Jerry Jones, the owner. With Mike McCarthy, Coach McCarthy he's been a damn good Cowboy coach. He's come up short in the playoffs. We have to hold him to the same standard we have to hold everybody else to.
Well, hold him to the same standard you did Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett. We look back at that. Jason Garrett had a good year the year he got fired. Or the year he left. Jason
Garrett was trash.
They had a pretty good year that year.
They had a pretty good year, but okay. You're telling me Jason Garrett, can you pull up Jason Garrett's record as the Cowboy head coach?
Like all-time record.
Can you pull up his record when he was with Cowboys, and I must pull up Mike McCarthy's.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy. Again, let me. What's his record? What's Jason Garrett's record?
Okay. Do you want his combined record?
Yeah, give me his record.
87-70.
No, as a Cowboy coach?
As a Cowboy coach.
87-70?
That's what it says.
All right, Mike McCarthy is 42-25. The last 3 seasons, he's won 12 games and lost 5. He's finished first, second, and first in the NFC. His playoff record, however, is 1-3. Now, we again, we're going to hold him to the same standard. Again, we got to hold him to that same standard.
Rob told me it's 59. Maybe I looked at a combined for when he was coaching before.
Okay, 59-48.
But if that's the case, I feel like Mike McCarthy, we could give him the record trophy.
But you have to give him the same courtesy that you gave Jason Garrett. You have to give. There were a lot of losing seasons in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. Mike McCarthy has only had 1 losing season in Dallas, and that was his very first year where they went 6-10. Other than that, 12-5, making playoff appearances. You want. That's what you need. If you're a head coach, you're coaching for a team to win a championship. But most importantly, the most important aspect of it is you don't make a Super Bowl if you don't make the playoffs. That means you have to win. You have to win games in your regular season. So hold on, I want to look at something. In Dallas, 10-6, 13-3, 5-3, 8-8, 8-8, 8-8. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out of 10 seasons in Dallas, he's only had 3 winning seasons. Everything has been subpar, mediocre. He's actually underachieved. So you mean to tell me that Jerry Jones wants to let go of a man that you've went to the playoffs and won the division, the NFC East division, or is it the NFC East or is it NFC West? East. NFC East.
Possibly
NFC
at
East
its
at this,
hardest point.
you mean to tell me you want to cut a man loose that has won, like, again, Jason Garrett, 3 out of his 10 seasons were winning seasons in Dallas, where they went to the playoffs. Mike McCarthy, only been there for 4 seasons. 3 out of his 4 seasons have been, playoff ball. Now, again, we have to hold him to that standard because you brought him in to, again, change the trajectory of this organization. And I have to say he's done a damn fine job, because you look at the numbers that Dak has had. Dak threw for MVP numbers, and he should have been the MVP this past year. Or what he should have been the MVP. I'm not even a Cowboy fan. I don't like the Cowboys. But what Dak did, you don't turn a blind eye to that. Now, the problem is, again, it's Jerry. You have an owner who he wants to be the face. He wants to be the guy, the gentleman that wants to do all the interviews. He wants to do, the radio shows, and he wants everybody to put the mics in his face and whatnot. But this is about the Dallas Cowboys. Even though he's the owner, we don't take nothing away. But this is about the Dallas Cowboys, and you cannot let yourself get in the way. Now, when I say Jerry gets in the way of a lot of things, now I know he had a good personal relationship with Jason Garrett, because, again, 3 out of 10 seasons that you had as the head coach were only winning seasons. Somebody would have got the boot a long time ago. But you ask that question. You have a coach in Mike McCarthy, and this team is going in the right direction. You have to make some necessary moves. You gotta again, you need to sign some players. You got to get some players on the roster. You got to fill the needs that you need on your team to compete, because Philly's gotten better. Philly's gotten really better with the addition to Saquon Barkley. That right there in itself takes their offense to a different level. We're not going to talk about the Giants because they're garbage. They're trash juice. The Commanders, they just got a new coach in Dan Quinn, so we have to see how they fare, and they need to address the quarterback position on that team. So the 2 top dogs in the NFC East are the Cowboys and the Eagles. The Cowboys have not done anything to close the gap that Philadelphia has on them. And now you're talking about the last year of Michael
3
McCarthy
of your best player contracts.
And this really is. It's really it. Honestly, if I'm Dak, I like this. If I'm Dak, or if I'm Mike McCarthy, I like this. Micah Parsons, I like it, because ultimately you go out there and compete, and you have the year that you are envisioning, have a great monster year. You control the contract talks.
I agree. The ball is in 100% in Dak's court. And he has control of that entire organization.
And you have a lot of individuals that talk like, oh man, Dak's ass, or Dak's trash, and this, that, and the other. But he's not. He's actually a really, really good quarterback. And you talk about, like, is he worth 40, 50 million? It's only one quarterback in the league, honestly, that's worth that much.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes, yes. That has shown it consistently. Dak is their best chance of winning the Super Bowl. You're not going to get nobody better. And if Jerry, I can just see Jerry and his arrogance getting in the way of doing what's best for the team. So, I mean, the ball is in Dak Prescott's court. It's in Mike McCarthy's court. It's in, Micah's court and CD. You go out there and you put up numbers. You guys can negotiate your demands. This is what I want, and so forth. And Jerry's going to be in a dilemma. He's going to be in a huge dilemma, because even still so with Mike McCarthy. Now, I'm speaking hypothetically. If now the Cowboys don't go to the Super Bowl, and let's say they go to the NFC Championship and fall to, a team, and he lets Mike McCarthy go, Mike McCarthy's only going to be on the street for not even more than 24 hours. Because what he has done, again, he's shown that he can coach, and he still got it, and he can lead a team. You mean to tell me that there's not one franchise in the NFL that wouldn't take a flyer on a Mike McCarthy after he's done what he's done in Dallas and what he's done with Dak Prescott as far as improving his game as a passer and so forth?
That's why Dallas took him off after Green Bay, because he was still good in Green Bay. He just kept falling short, and that's his issue. But Nate, there is a man that never falls short and provides the best of what he can provide, and that is Jeff Wertepney.
That's last name. Yep.
Yes, with some great car insurance.
Here's to the grown-ups. Your car is now your office, stage, nursery. Sorry, Erie Insurance offers products that lots of other companies don't. That's a big deal, and it's a good deal, too. And with Erie, you get your own independent agent, not a giant corporate call center or some online robot. You meet with a real person, like this.
Your local Erie agent is Building Block Insurance Group. Get a quote today at 704-464-4544.
Erie Insurance.
And when you call Jeff Wertepney at 704-464-4544, go ahead and ask him if he thinks the MVP trophy is rigged, and if Associated Press should not be the ones voting for this. But let's get on with that. Let's get on with that, Nate. Do you hear? I think I hear something, Nate. Do you hear that?
Go ahead.
Because I'm ready to get a little messy with Nate Ness. Now, I was going to split this up into two segments, but I have the perfect segue into how I was going to split it up. So I'm just going to make it one big segment, and we're going to post it as such. So we look at this past MVP performance that Lamar Jackson has done. And we have said, look, even though Lamar Jackson might be one of the most electric players, he's not the most electric player, in my opinion. He's definitely one of the most electric players on the football field. There's nothing more electric than extending a play to get a first down. And there was no other player that was better than that than Dak Prescott this past year. So we look at Lamar's numbers this past year and we say, okay, and these are small. These are like not everything like advanced. These are not all advanced stats, but we're going to say this. Lamar in 16 games threw for 67.2% completion. He had 4,499 scrimmage yards, 21 TDs to 13 turnovers. That is one of the probably the iffiest MVP. Like somebody, any starting quarterback in the league that is at an elite level, that is considered elite, could put up those numbers. 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, 30 touchdowns, and 13 turnovers. Anybody can do it. In fact, anybody can do it. Even somebody whose worst season with the New Orleans Saints in 2007 could do it. Do you want to know what Drew Brees did in 2007, Nate?
Enlighten me.
Tell me how similar these stats are, and then tell me if Drew Brees should win MVP after putting these numbers up. So Drew Brees in 2007, he was 67.5% completion. He had 4,475 yards of scrimmage with 29 touchdowns and 22 turnovers. So just about every single stat other than the turnover category is right on the bullseye with Lamar Jackson's MVP season. But yet, we're going to give somebody that had such a mediocre season the MVP because we say, okay, this guy is an electric ball player. But yet when we go back in past history and it happens with somebody else, Drew Brees wasn't even close to MVP that season. He wasn't even close to it because that is his worst year on the New Orleans Saints was 2007. And I just told you those yards. But we're going to get to some of his best years, and we're going to say, hey, is the MVP award rigged because has Drew Brees earned the MVP award in these number of seasons? And how do we compare Drew Brees' numbers to the people that won MVP that year? And I'm going to get a little messy tonight, Nate Nessy. I'm going to get a little messy. So I hope you're ready because I'm so passionate about Drew Brees, and I feel that he was done so bad by the NFL by not getting anything but Offensive Player of the Year. Of course he got Offensive Player. He should have got dang MVP too to go with it. 2 trophies in his trophy case. But because his MVP race is so rigged, do you realize who got 49 votes in this past MVP race. Lamar Jackson got 49 votes in this past MVP race. So you have 50 votes Associated Press comes out with. Do you know who got that one vote, that one other vote?
Patrick Mahomes.
It wasn't even Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't Dak Prescott. It was Josh Allen, the dude who had the most turnovers out the whole league. The dude who could not go a game without having 2 turnovers. Now, you're going to sit here and tell me that dude now Dak, although he did not go far in the playoffs, MVP is a regular season trophy. That's what they say. Now, people also like to say, well, team's record is considered in that category. I don't care about team record. It's not most valuable team. If it were most valuable team, then there would be a trophy for it. It is most valuable player. It is somebody who is most valuable to their team. They should take a page out of the Heisman Trophy because Lamar, when he won the Heisman Trophy, he was not even close to the best team in the country. But he was the best player in the country in college that year. But his team was not.
No.
So the MVP of college, they are the most valuable player. It is not most valuable team. It never has been. So why do we have this narrative that, hey, this person only won 7 games this year. This person won 13 games this year. Well, Drew Brees has had 2 top 10 defenses in his whole career. But yet he's putting up MVP numbers consistently every year. And you're going to sit here and tell me, okay, a dude that has the most 5,000-yard passing seasons of all time isn't even close, hasn't had 1 MVP. He's led the league in passing 7 times. He's led the league in completion percentage 6 times. He's led the league in completions 6 times. He's led the league in your passing yards per game 6 times. He's actually has the NFL record for a completion percentage and yards per game in a single season. He has those 2 records. And you're going to sit here and tell me that Drew Brees, after 6 times of leading the league in all these categories, is not even close to winning MVP. But I digress. Let's look at some of the numbers.
It should say international.
But Nate, I want to ask you,
Okay.
in your professional opinion, before I get into these numbers, and this isn't propaganda because numbers don't lie, ladies and gentlemen. Propaganda does. So we go into this MVP race. Do you think that there is something that needs to change? Even looking at this past season, when we saw that, hey, Lamar Jackson might have had okay numbers, but they're not MVP numbers. Is there something that needs to be changed with this MVP? Is there a narrative that needs to be created to say, hey, this is supposed to be most valuable player, not most valuable team, and so that we can actually bring prestige back to the MVP?
Not now. No.
Most valuable player, to get that award, it also takes, we're talking about the individual award, but also the individual has and the way the team wins, they correlate with each other. You know, how the team's record and so forth, they correlate with each other. Now, we talk about Drew Brees. We talk about Drew Brees and we talk about just how great he is and so forth and whatnot. I do have to tell you that at that time, and this is not no excuse, but we're talking about a young Tom Brady he was competing against, a young Aaron Rodgers. You know, you had Ben Roethlisberger. You had, some good Peyton Manning. You had some quarterback. I'm talking about those names in itself. Those are all first ballot Hall of Famers. Now, this year the MVP award, it's crazy because, we talk about these quarterbacks and so forth, and the MVP has become the quarterback award, to be honest with you. It has become the quarterback award because if I had to pick, I can, Lamar Jackson, he's had, some great years, and the thing about it is his numbers, they may not be the 4,500, 4,600 yards passing that Dak Prescott has done and achieved, or 5,000 yards passing that Patrick Mahomes does and whatnot. Lamar is must-see TV as folks characterize him as. He's an excitement. He's an and one mixtape on the football field. And he puts fans in the stands, and he excites people with the dynamic of running the ball and again throwing. You know, he's Michael Vick 2.0. You know, that's the I guess you can say the that's the talk. You know, that's the narrative in regards to Lamar. Now, was he deserving of it, the MVP? His team finished, if I'm not mistaken, what did his team finish?
First in the AFC.
First in the AFC. What was the record?
13-4.
13-4. And Dak finished 12-5. Now they're going to look at that. They both finished first in their respective divisions and winning their division titles. So we don't take anything from them. Dak threw career number in yards, touchdowns, so forth. Both of these individuals came up short in the playoffs. And so forth. The MVP award is very, very skewed.
Oh, I agree.
If you're going to give it to the most valuable player in the league, in my opinion, is 15 in Kansas City. Mahomes.
Were we taking regular season or postseason?
Both. He's the most valuable player because of what he does for his team. And Patrick Mahomes, what he does, you know, from a leadership standpoint, from what he's excitement on the field as well. You know, if we're gonna the MVP award, I want to go in a different direction. Hold on. Hey Dad, take the plugs out. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You watched basketball in the 90s.
Correct.
All right. The 90s, from 90 all the way up until 99. Who was the best NBA player that played in the NBA?
In the 90s?
Yes.
Give me a second. Let me see. In the 90s, the best NBA player. The best NBA player in the 90s. When did Jordan retire?
Jordan officially retired in 99.
It was Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Okay. Michael Jordan was the best player in the 90s.
That's you know. Now,
That's, okay. That's my opinion. We share the same thing.
Yeah.
I say this because as great as Michael Jordan was, he couldn't get the MVP every year. He was the most invaluable player, but you couldn't give it to him. So I say this, that the MVP award is skewed in so many aspects because Dak was the MVP. He deserved it. But it's a popularity contest if you really want to get real. You know, we say the saying, and one of my favorite sayings, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Dak's numbers were well deserving. Yet it's popularity. Lamar Jackson, he's entertainment. He is just entertaining when he gets on that field and when he gets going. When, again, from spinning and just running the ball and just doing the things that he does, he does it. Dak doesn't do it as exciting as Lamar. And it's a popularity chase. It's a popularity contest and whatnot. And over the last 10 years, can we pull up the last 10 MVPs?
I got it right here.
Who are the last 10 MVPs?
You want me to tell you in order? Lamar, Mahomes, Rodgers, Lamar, Mahomes, Brady, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Rodgers, Manning.
I would say Patrick Mahomes earned all of his MVPs. Aaron Rodgers, same thing. Lamar's very first MVP. Lamar's very first MVP was deserved. Like he took the NFL world by storm. Brady's Brady. Both Matt Ryan and Cam Newton both had seasons that are unforgettable. This MVP is skewed. AP deserves Adrian. He earned his MVP by running for 2K. It's essentially a popularity contest tied on how your team is doing. That's what it comes down to.
Well, let's talk about some numbers, Nate, because I want to get into this Drew Brees conversation for MVP and why he has never won an MVP in his career. So we go back. I have 3 years here, and you can tell me whether or not that you agree if Drew Brees should be MVP this year or should not, or if he should be close to winning MVP. Now we
Okay.
go back to 2014 when Aaron Rodgers won MVP. Okay, I'm not going to say the record because in my mind, record should not be considered when you're doing MVP. It should
Okay.
be most valuable player.
Give me numbers.
So I'm going to give you numbers. I'll give you numbers. And I'm not saying anything after 2014. I'm not saying Drew Brees is MVP level. We can talk about when he had a great season in 2018, when he had the greatest percentage passing ever, right? But he didn't throw that many yards. And to me, if you throw a lot of yards, that means you are productive. So in 2014, Aaron Rodgers threw for 4,300 yards, had a 65.6% completion percentage, 38 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, which is crazy. That's really good numbers. He had a 0.9 interception percentage, very good. And there's really nothing you could say about that. Those are pretty good numbers and possibly MVP. But then you go to 2014 with Drew. Well, Aaron Rodgers led the league that year in interception percentage, of course. Drew led the league in completions, attempts. He had a 69.2% completion percentage, which is almost 3 more than Aaron Rodgers that year. He led the league in passing with almost 5,000 yards, just short with 4,952. Had 309.5 yards per game, led the league, and then he had 33 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, which you can say, okay, well, Aaron Rodgers had more touchdowns, less interceptions, and that's really what it boils down to, right? And we could say that. But Drew Brees is in this conversation for MVP, in my opinion, in 2014. Whether he wins it or not, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, right? But these other years, we look back at it. We go back to 2011.
7-9 record.
Drew
That's
Brees did have in 2014, he had a 7-9 record, and Aaron Rodgers had a 12-4. But let's go to when Drew Brees won Offensive Player of the Year in 2011 for the second time. Do you know what his record was, Nate?
13-3.
13-3. Okay, well, Aaron Rodgers won it that year again, and he went 14-1, which won one more game. Cool, perfect. Aaron Rodgers had the best numbers of his career this year. He had 4,643% yards passing, 68.3%, and then he had 45-6 touchdown to interception ratio, and then he led the league in touchdown percentage, set an NFL record for passer rating for that season, which is good. Those are good numbers. My buddy has an argument that J.J. Watt should have won in 2014.
No, he
probably should have. He definitely should have.
I think he had like a 4 or 5 touchdowns on.
Well, we've looked at it, and Aaron J.J. Watt actually was all pro in 2 different positions.
2 different positions, yeah, as a D tackle and a DN and a strong side DN.
So we look back at Aaron Rodgers' 2011 season when Drew Brees ended up winning Offensive Player of the Year. And I just told you those numbers. But let's look at Drew Brees. Drew Brees led the league in completions. He led the league in completion percentage with 71.2. Now, to me, percentage matters a lot because that determines, hey, how many times are my wide receivers going to get the ball during the game? 71% of the time, my wide receivers, there's a ball in their hands. And so Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers had 4,600 yards. Drew Brees also had a statistical record year, 54-76 for Drew Brees, Nate. Over 800 yards more than Aaron Rodgers. He actually set a record for yards per game with 342.3, led the league in touchdowns with 46 and had 14 picks. Now, 2011, I'm giving it to Drew Brees, and I have a little bias there, but those numbers, Nate, you can tell me everything. Drew Brees checks every check mark there besides interceptions. Mm-hmm. Now, Aaron Rodgers, his interception ratio was 46-14, or not 46-14, 45-6, right? And Drew Brees was 46-14. But the other numbers are so overwhelming compared to Aaron Rodgers. It makes eight more turnovers look negligible.
I mean, you can't front. Those are some crazy numbers. But again, popularity contest. 14-1 beats 13-3.
And it realistically shouldn't, which is why Drew Brees has never won an MVP because it's a popularity contest.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Manning in 08. And we're going to get to 08. I'm glad you brought that up, Jack, because let's get to that 08 season when Peyton Manning won MVP. Nate, please tell me if these are MVP numbers.
Hell
In
no.
2008, Peyton Manning threw 4,002 yards, had a
Mm-hmm.
66.8% completion percentage,
Mm-hmm.
not leading the league in any QB category, had a 12-4 record, if you want to talk about record, and had 27-12. Okay? 27-12. 2-1, basically, just about. Just a little over 2-1.
That's all it is, 2-1.
Now let's look at when Drew Brees won Offensive Player of the Year for the first time. Now he had a record of 8-8, and you're going to say, okay, well, Connor, that was the reason Drew Brees didn't win MVP. But he led the league in completions another time, attempts another time, had a 65% completion, a little less than he usually has. Led the league in passing with what, Nate? 5,069 yards. That is over 1,000 more passing yards than Peyton Manning won in 2008 with 316 yards per game. Guess what, Nate? He also led the league in that. He led the league in touchdowns with 34 to 17 interceptions. You're going to sit here and tell me that these two guys with 2-1 touchdown to interception ratios, but one dude has 1,000 more yards than the other one. Do you know how many games Peyton Manning would have to play to get 1,000 more yards? Do you want to be real? He would have to play, probably more than 3. He had 4,000 yards in 16 games, meaning he threw for 250 yards a game. Okay? To get 1,000 more yards, he has to play 4 more games in order to reach Drew Brees' level of prestige that year. And you're going to sit here and tell me just because a player with a better record that has underwhelmingly worse stats than the person with the lower record is going to win it because it's not most valuable player at the end of the day. It's most valuable team.
8-8. 8-8. Drew was 8-8 that year.
We might as well call it most valuable team if we're going to give it to the person with the better record every time.
8-8. Popularity contest, 8-8, because those numbers, I mean, they both threw 2-1 ratio interceptions. Drew, if I'm not mistaken, did he have the interception high that year in the league? Was 17?
Nope. I don't think so. Did he? I don't know. It doesn't tell me, but it's not his high in interceptions any season.
But
no, it hasn't. No, it does tell me. He did not lead the league. He led the league with in interceptions in 2012.
He threw for 43 and 19. Okay.
But he also led in touchdowns. So let's not forget that.
This comes at the heel of, again, what I
agree.
You know, what I said before. Again, the numbers and the team. I mean, the how your team is playing. Again, they correlate. You know, and I feel that, you know, Peyton, he shouldn't have got the MVP award, but I mean, they gave it to him because that year the Colts were playing great football. If I'm not mistaken, the Colts, did they go to the Super Bowl that year?
I think they might have. 2000.
The next year,
they might have won Super Bowl.
The next year,
in 2008. But
Drew Brees and the Saints knocked off the Colts in Super Bowl. So, I mean, you got to also, I mean, this is the reality of it. Is you know what, the numbers may be great, yet people are going to, the voters are going to take in, okay, how does his numbers correlate and translate to wins and losses with the team? Like, how does that affect it? Is he really that big of again, an important piece to this team? Like, if we take him off of this team, how does that, you know, correlate? How does this team do? How does this team fare and whatnot? And then on top of that, that was Peyton Manning. His last name is Manning.
Popularity contest.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about, look, Drew Brees has only had a top 10 defense twice in his entire career. So you're going to tell me that because the Saints have failed to build a team around Drew Brees like other teams have, we're going to punish the person that has MVP numbers? We're going to punish him?
Okay, we have the same conversation when it comes to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. We have the same conversation when it comes to Brady and Manning. And this is in regards to Brady has won 7 titles, 7 Super Bowls. And the knock to, I guess you can say the conversation that's had with the battle of Manning Brady is the fact that Brady had Belichick in a top 10 defense every year compared to Manning, who's never had really a top 10 defense. And when and again, that's the conversation that's going to be had regardless. We can't use that play into this conversation. Why? Because
Well,
we're talking about an individual award. We're talking about an individual award,
not really.
award that really is not individual award because it's predicated and tied to team success and whatnot. Again, Cam Newton. Again, I'm gonna just use Cam for an example. The year he won MVP, threw for 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and ran for another, I think, 5 or 10 more touchdowns. His team was 15-1 and went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Denver Broncos. His team had a hell of a year. He was nothing but he had to have been the MVP. Now we go to was it the year before? Matt Ryan wins his MVP. He has a career year and touchdowns, and he threw a less amount of interceptions, and his team goes to the Super Bowl and they lose to the Patriots. He was the MVP that year because of the numbers that he put up and what his team was doing, and those numbers correlated to team victories and what the team was.
It's just you look at and I know you have less players on the court, but you look at teams, you look at basketball. The MVP is always the person with the best stats in the league because that is the person that is the most dominant in the league. Whether or not Joel Embiid's won MVP, didn't go far in the playoffs. Okay, and we're gonna say, okay, well, Joel Embiid is MVP. He's got the best stats in the league, but yet he has failed to do what these other people are doing. So he's got a worse record, even though he probably was first seed that year. He's failed to bring his team to the playoffs. And then we're going to say, okay, well, Drew Brees has the best stats in the entire league. Failed to bring his team to the playoffs because of the team around him, but we're going to punish him and not give him MVP when we see it in other sports 100 times to none. And so college football and NBA have MVP right. They are going to give it to the person that is the most valuable player. Therefore, they're going to give it to the person that, hey, you have the best stats. We see how well you've done on your team. You might have not had the greatest record, but because you have been so instrumental in your team to get that record, we're going to give it to you. And I want to address this comment. We just looked at stats with Drew Brees. The margin between him and Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers, it was not slim. He had over 1,000 more yards than Peyton Manning. If that is slim, you need to go look up slim in the dictionary because obviously you don't know what it means. But I digress. It is a little past 8 o'clock, and we need to kind of set the tone, Nate. Let me stop getting a little messy. Let me stop getting a little messy. There we go. Is that loud to you, or is that just loud? Maybe that's just loud to me. Okay. I don't know. For some reason, it seems like StreamYard has gotten louder. But usually, Nate, I give you, the ball's in your court, but there's just something I need to get off my chest tonight. And I am very appreciative that you let me finish off the show with this. Like I am very appreciative. You have no idea because I hate to steal your shine, because this is really your segment.
We're a team. Let's go.
But I want to introduce kind of my inner Ricky Williams, who wasn't amazing on the Saints. And I want to introduce New Week, New Chapter. So, Nate, I picked this scripture, this verse, for a specific reason. And I'm going to pop it up on the screen. I'm going to read it to you. Like, you read it yours to me. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. And you'll be like, okay, why are you giving me this scripture? Because everybody knows this, right? It's not obscure. But look, we pop this up, right? Is this on? Yeah, okay. We pop it up. Matthew 26, verses 14 through 16. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" Talking about Jesus. What is he going to get if he delivers Jesus the Son of God, the King of the Jews, to these chief priests. So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. And so for just 30 pieces of silver, Judas gave away the Son of God, the King of the Jews, for just 30 pieces of silver. And it's a mistake that he made. So I want to talk to everybody, and I won't try to make this brief, but I was on a phone call last night, and I really got to thinking, like, what do I want to do when I get older? And maybe we all have a vocation, right? We all have a calling. Maybe witnessing is one of those things that can pop up in my mind because of this scenario. Now, I tell you, Judas made a mistake. Had a conversation last night talking about the mistakes I've made in my life, about the mistakes that I have kind of inherited in my life, that I've seen in my life. But I want to say one thing. God is perfect. Everything happens for a reason. These mistakes are not coincidental. We are given free will in this life. And if Judas was not to make that choice, we would not have eternal life in heaven with Jesus Christ, with God. If Judas did not choose 30 silver pieces over Jesus Christ, we would not have the opportunity to go live in eternity with him. That would not be a thing. But because of this, and I'm going to tell you this, Nate, mistakes in our lives are perfect at what they were chosen to do. And I'm going to say it again, Nate. Mistakes in our lives are perfect at what they were chosen to do. Judas was so perfect at what he was chosen to do that now me, you, and everybody watching, everybody in this whole world now has the opportunity to live an eternal life with God, with Jesus Christ. And that is something special. He was so perfect at what he was chosen to do. Although he made that choice to sell Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, it was so perfect that now we have this grand opportunity that we would not have before if it had never happened. So I tell you, if you make mistakes in your life, like every single human have, we all fall short of the glory of God. Just think about it. Think about it. Say, hey, maybe this mistake was perfect at what it was chosen to. Maybe these bad things God puts in my life, these tough battles that he gives to his strongest soldiers, maybe it was just so perfect at what it was chosen to do. You have to look at the bad things in your life. You have to look at them as maybe they're not so bad. Maybe this is something that was put in my life to make me a better person, to make me a more spiritual person in God. Like I said, God gives his strongest battles to his toughest soldiers. And these battles are so perfect at what they were chosen to do that it's going to put me and you on the path that God has for us in the future. Everything happens for a reason. God is perfect. He makes no mistakes. And because of our mistakes, we are set on the path to where he wants us to go. So I want you, when you ask yourself why, why God does this, or why God does this, why? Before you ask God this, I want you to ask yourself these three questions in this order exactly. Why can stand for three things, right? I want you to ask these three things before you say, okay, God did this, God did that. Why does he do that in my life? Ask yourself these three questions. What hurt you? That's what you're going to ask first. Why stands for what hurt you. You're going to ask yourself what hurt you. And you're going to say, okay, this thing that he put in my life, it was a mistake that I inherited, that I saw, but it was so perfect at what it was chosen to do, but it hurt me in the process. It hurt me in the process. Because of that, you ask yourself the second question, who helped you? Who helped you from that hurt? Who helped you get over that hump in life? Who helped you on when you were feeling so down in the mistake that you chose to make that just got you, or this mistake that you inherited, this perfect mistake that you have not seen as perfect? What helped you get over that hump? And then that third question you ask yourself after you ask those two other things that why stands for, the third thing why stands for is what healed you? What healed you in this whole process of understanding, hey, what hurt me? Who helped me? What healed you in this final process? Because if you can ask yourself those three questions, you can say, hey, God, I understand. I understand every single thing that you have done for me and every single thing that I have experience in life to get me to that path that you want me to go. You're going to put me where you want me to go, but I'm asking you why, when in reality, I could be asking myself these 3 questions to really understand why this is happening in my life. And I'm going to say it one more time. These mistakes in your life are so perfect at what they were chosen to do. You don't understand how good he is. We all have our stories. We've all gone through everything. But don't take mistakes as something imperfect God is doing in your life, because he's not imperfect. He makes no mistakes. He's very much perfect. And I will say, to be perfect might be impossible for us, but to strive for perfection is not. And when we strive for perfection and we ask ourselves these questions before we go ahead and ask the teacher, you're in math class and you got something on the board that you just don't understand because you haven't paid attention in class. But if you were to pay attention, you wouldn't have to ask yourself or the teacher that question, because you could have asked yourself that question like, okay, this is this because of this. X plus Y equals 12 because X is 5 and Y is 7. But I only got to that because I asked myself those 3 questions of what Y actually means, of why God is doing this in my life. So make no mistake, these mistakes in your life, they're perfect at what they were chosen to do. Don't take them for mistakes. You will be where God is going to put you. Don't doubt, because through him, you can do all things. He strengthens us. He cares for us. He loves us. He's a forgiving and gracious God. So don't get doubtful. Don't get disheartened. Don't get disappointed, because God is there every step of the way. We just got to trust him. So Nate, I know you like to say the prayer every time, but if you don't mind, I'm going to put the saddle on and we're going to go. And you ask me every time, are you ready, Nate?
I'm ready.
Perfect. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for letting us come together and gather today in fellowship after we just talked a little bit about football. And most importantly, we're here to witness you. We're here to witness Christ. We're here to witness these mistakes in our lives that just might not be mistakes at the end of the day, because these were so perfect at what they were chosen to do in our lives that they just might not be these mistakes we think they are. Because at the end of the day, you're going to put us where we need to go. You're going to put us on that path. You're going to put us on that strive for perfection, to where we don't have to worry. We don't have to doubt, because every step of the way you're going to be there. And all we have to do is trust. So I pray that you help people see how good you are and how gracious you are and how forgiving you are, and that these mistakes are for the best in their lives. These mistakes are not coincidental. And these mistakes are perfect at what they were chosen to do. So I ask you to bless us throughout the rest of the week. We end the show on the high note. We begin the week on a high note. We end the week on a high note. And keep us on that high note. Keep us on that high horse, because we can do all things through you who strengthens us. We love you, God. We know you care for us. And in Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. I told you I had a lot to get off my chest. I had a lot to get off my chest. I'm glad you let me do that. Because I had that conversation last night.
What you gotta do in the morning?
And it was eye-opening. It was just something that I was like, hey, is this something that I want to do in my future endeavors, in my future careers, witnessing?
Mm-hmm.
And it might just be. But who knows? Nate, is there anything you would like to say at the end of this segment? Anything you would like to add?
Did a hell of a job, man. Hell of a job.
I appreciate that.
Hell of a job.
Appreciate
Close us out. Close us out, man. Close us out.
Well, it is a little bit past 8 o'clock. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this episode, and I thank everybody for coming out who have just watched and who just listened to me preach. I might not be the wisest guy, but I might have a little bit of wisdom from the Lord. I like to think so. And so, as he watches us through the rest of the week, come back on Tuesday at 7 o'clock to watch the breakdown because we're not leaving you. And most importantly, God's not leaving you either. So come back at 7 o'clock. I'm your co-host, Connor Davis. The man to my right is Nate Ness, the man, the myth, the legend. I like to call him the 5-year NFL vet, the man y'all all came to see. We'll be here next week, and it's been fun. Peace.
Even if I go there.